We'll see what happens with Bosa. I think we kind of assume, and you've said like the Bosa one is easy because he's been the level of player that he's been. The Trent Williams one was easy because of the relationship, but really he was a free agent. The market dictated what you had to pay Trent, right? But the Niners, their own guys, they got away with, would you agree? It's fair to say they got away with the Kittle contract? Not that Kittle got screwed, but just that went well for the 49ers. Like they did that the way they want to do it.
I think two of their better players, they broke off Fred last year too, and I know he kind of had a down year.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you say just the price of middle linebackers and the price of tight ends just is not the price of tackles, quarterbacks, and pass rushers?
Yeah.
It's just pretty good price points. It's just you get to bargain shop for elite players.
Yeah, so I guess the question is like, is this going to be is this going to be the position they're in with Bosa? Is this going to be the position that they put themselves in a lot if they get a player who just happens to be playing a position where the market is going bonkers, like the receiver market is?
Yeah, I mean the Kittle thing, it didn't really get that weird.
No,
Jimmy thing they handled that one pretty seamlessly. I would say, though, the 49ers are not – I don't ever remember them groundbreaking contracts. I think they honestly want – I mean, I'm not talking about on the field and the success. I'm just saying the way financially they operate their franchise is very Belichickian. I mean, they're trying to get under market deals, extend guys early. Howie does a lot of this, extend guys early. Now, they had success for a long period of time with the Bowmans, the Staley, the Frank Gores, Patrick Willis's. It has become a little more difficult now with the astronomical salaries. Because, when Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman are getting $40 million extensions in 2010 or 11 or 12, it didn't feel as contentious if you were willing to kind of pay near market value. Now it's like these guys get very offended if they're not the top because the money is so crazy that it's kind of got a baseball feel to it right now, doesn't it? In terms of the contracts, with the guys getting kind of like offended. And again, it's always, been a little touch and go with contracts in baseball and football, but it does feel right now with the markers are now set and I got to eclipse the marker and it gets ugly quick. I don't know. I do think that the 49ers are not just out here willy-nilly in it. Like, for example, the Von Miller contract, like I bet they laugh at stuff like that because Bill Belichick would. A lot of teams would. Like we wouldn't do that because we wouldn't do a deal out of desperation. I do think it gets to be a slippery slope with your own guys who you care about. Like ultimately the 49ers care and value Deebo Samuel. They care and valued Fred Warner and George Kittle and immediately Trent Williams, and just like they did with Joe Staley when he was here, and now I think Nick Bosa, right? There's the core guys that they like are their type guys, and they're able to, and this is part of business, being able to separate your emotions and doing business. Because ultimately their job is to get you for as cheap as humanly possible, right? That's John's, Parag's, Kyle's. The cheaper I can get you, the more other players I can get. And your prerogative as a player, just like with a lot of... Why did so many guys leave Belichick over the years? Not because they probably didn't want to keep winning Super Bowls. Like you listen to that book or you hear guys talk, it's like, well, I knew they weren't going to pay me that, right? I remember playing golf with Shane Vereen. He's like, I called back saying we wanted me, but they just would not go to this offer.
Yeah.
Because Bill was the most unemotional, like, my final offer's $4 million. And he's like, well, they're paying me 5.2. Will you just hit 4.7? No! And most human beings, right? I mean, it's just hard. You get emotional. It's easy to be like, oh, shit, I'll just pay. He never would. Now, the Niners, I'm not saying are going to be that strict. I would say he's the strictest, right? Never budged. They feel like they have a little more wiggle room, but they are less likely to just start unloading just bags of money. There's a frugal element to them. There just is.
You're right. It's a really interesting test case for the Niners because, somebody said Bosa's going to be the highest paid. Yeah, but Bosa's going to, when Nick Bosa signs his contract, it'll make him the highest paid pass rusher.
But don't you think it's easier? Because I would say, obviously, quarterbacks are in their own category. The next two positions, if you have a star tackle or a star pass rusher, they're not quarterbacks, but they're closer to like beachfront property than like in Stockton.
Yeah.
They're pretty valuable. And the Chargers, who are notoriously stingy and frugal like gave Joey. Like just
Yeah, I
part
do
of
think
doing
it's easier.
business.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that Deebo's an interesting test case because George Kittle just happens to play tight end. Sucks for George Kittle, but it's good for negotiations for the 49ers, right? Jimmy,
why is Travis Kelce probably going to retire a Chief and Tyreek Hill did not? It's way easier to keep Travis Kelce.
Yeah. Deebo happens to be their best player. Like, it's not like Deebo plays receiver and then is inflated like Christian Kirk. I mean, he is clearly one of their best players and plays a position where the salaries are massive. So,
well, if Deebo would have been a free agent, and this is the problem, this is why they keep telling themselves. Yeah, but he would have got.
I think maybe
he would have got. He would have just got so much money, it would have been stupid, right? I mean, he would have just got an astronomical amount of money.
He'd be the highest paid receiver in the league.
Yeah. Someone would have given him, because the bidding on him would have been crazy, because there would have been 3 or 4 teams
Dolphins,
trying to sign him. The Jets, obviously the Jags, the Colts. I mean, there would have been so many teams trying to sign him.
Yeah.
The Browns had cap space. Who knows? Maybe they just like, let's just pay instead of Mari. Let's just pay him.
The Rams would have found a way.
Yeah, the Rams ended up signing him to the biggest deal ever.
Like somebody said, I'd rather have Drake London. Well, I mean, I like Drake London. Drake London had one great year at USC and got hurt that year.
But you see, we talk about the Belichickian way. If you do love a couple guys as a wide receiver, if they would discuss pick 10 and like a 2 and a 3, you could talk yourself into it pretty quick.
Really quickly. Well, like I've seen a few mock drafts with Jamison Williams going to the Chiefs, right? It'll be interesting to see, do the Chiefs draft a receiver? And if they do, if he's, what percent of Tyreek would he be for them?
When the 49ers made the trade for DeForest Buckner, wouldn't you imagine they had a pretty good grade at the time on Javon Kinlaw? And they felt pretty good, like, we'll be able to replace this guy with a much cheaper option.
Yeah.
And they just got burned.
And it was never about be 100% of DeForest Buckner. It was like, if he can just be 88% of DeForest Buckner.
And no matter how great his workouts that he's putting on Instagram in the back of the facility,
better than no workouts.
It has been a disaster through 2 years. So it's just a learning experience to, like, I say this all the time about the draft. Every single draft room right now, they're probably in the middle of meetings, the entire league. You are having these discussions on players. Drake London, like, there are going to be guys in draft room that like him. There are going to be guys that think he's slow. There are going to be guys like, well, he's already been injured. If he gets injured, he's already, not the fastest player. The takes are all over the place. But in 2 or 3 years, it's going to be like, how did Drake London last till 34? Or, can you believe they fucking drafted Drake London at 9? What a disaster that pick is. But right now, the information you have is just your take as a building on that guy. And then it dramatically changes. Like, ultimately, there were a lot of people in the league that probably thought not that high on Justin Jefferson. Because it's pretty clear that if anyone would have known Justin Jefferson would have been that freaking good, I'd have to go back and look at that draft, but how does he not last past the 5th pick? I mean, it's just, he is dramatically better than the entire league thought. Even Minnesota would have to tell you, yeah, we thought he was good. We didn't know he was this good, right?
Yeah.
So the draft is just such a crapshoot. Deebo, for 2 years, like, this Deebo guy's pretty cool. Like, he's sweet. And then this year he turns into, like, I don't even know what that was. We'd never seen it. But no one had. I mean, everyone's like, what is this? You're like, yeah, it's just the sweetest player I've ever seen. But it happened in year 3, about halfway through the season.
Right. The crazy part of it, too, is part of you is like, well, I hope he doesn't have to do all that stuff again. But that stuff is what makes him now pretty hard to value, right? You hope he doesn't have to carry 9 times a game. That'd be.
I guess my point is, I gave the 49ers a lot of credit. I'm like, DeForest Buckner for pick 13. Now, Deebo is what we just witnessed was better than anything DeForest was with the Niners, but it's like, well, you get pick 10, pick 50, and then next year second. It'd be easy. You can just, with draft picks and the potential, you can talk yourself into it, and then they miss and you're screwed.
Well, like you always, that 10th pick, you've always said this, and you're right, becomes a player, right? And then when it's a player, the question is, would you trade that player for that player? So that pick becomes Garrett Wilson. Okay, would you trade in a year? Will you look back and go, Garrett Wilson for Deebo and a couple of other picks, not crazy? Because the reality is, like, Deebo's value is such that I don't think, you're not in great shape if you get 80% of Deebo and then some other help, some other places. Like, oh, we got a nickel with the other pick and a right guard with the other pick. It's like, okay, but you had that game-breaking receiver who single-handedly beat the Rams in a must-win game to get into the playoffs. So 80% of that guy, ugh. You know what I mean? Like, that's – you don't need – they got balance is not their issue. They need a guard. They need somebody – star game-breaking playmaker is the issue, and they have one, and he knows it.
But wouldn't you say 1 point of difference for them in these big games, the years that they won all the playoff games, 2 this year and I guess 2-3 years ago, was high-end talent? Because a lot of people, once you get to the playoffs, a lot of people have like functional starters here and there, but like, what did the Cowboys lack? You know, Micah Parsons was sweet, but like, you know, CD was a little off. They just didn't have the high-end guys. The Green Bay game, it was like Rodgers and Devontae. But it was like, where's everyone else? The Niners had like 5 or 6 guys that were like, they're Pro Bowlers.
Yeah, I mean, what you know the saying, like, you don't get to take your timeouts with you into the locker room?
I love that saying.
I love that saying. If you're going to save money on Deebo, then what are you spending it on then? Could you imagine a world in which Deebo gets traded and Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the roster? I don't want to live in that world, John.
I don't either.
I don't want to do live streams in that world. I mean, we would. But it'd be warfare. I mean, it would.
The Deebo traded pod and videos they'd pop.
Yeah, maybe I should keep my phone off of sleep mode when I go to bed in case that I don't want to miss. I think we could do that video at 2 a.m. Pacific and it would do big numbers.
I do think that's one that, while it's been short-lived, Deebo immediately became like. Part of it is just the power of the Niners, the fan base. He became like a Steph or Clay quick. It's like, we love this guy.
Well, there's something about being if a guy is their guy, and then he becomes like, it's one thing if you're the number 1 pick and you're just a star. It's another thing if you're kind of Steph, you acquire the chip on the shoulder that the player has. No one believes in Steph. He becomes a star. Then it becomes, if I'm a Steph fan, no one believed in me either. And look at what we did together, me and Steph. Well, that's a powerful thing, man.
And I think part of it too is like, one thing I think you see Kyrie like got into it with a fan in New York. It's just like, why is this guy always so like, just relax. I think this Tiger's really turned into this. Now, Tiger was so good when he was young. It didn't matter if he was an asshole or whatever. But now when you watch Tiger, you're like, God, he's pretty likable. Like, he's always smiling. There was a quality to Deebo. It's like, God damn, this guy's friendly. He's always smiling and having the time of his life. He's so happy. Like, why is he so happy? Steph had that quality. Like, he's just happy. There's something to a happy player. Like Mahomes, how happy until like that Cincinnati second half. The majority of his career, he's like the best player in the league. And it's like, God, he's having so much fun. Favre had that quality. You can't get rid of sweet players who are happy because you know who they resonate with? Everyone. The hardcore fans, the casual fans are like, I love that.
The 8-year-olds who just turned on the game for the first time. His name's Deebo, for crying out loud. Like, he's perfect.
Just sweet.
Yeah.